Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Dr. Shilpi here. This video is a continuation of the previous video in which I had covered the other aspects of trigeminal neuralgia. So let's get started. So coming to pathophysiology of trigeminal neuralgia. So there are multiple theories and several hypotheses that have been implicated for trigeminal neuralgia. So this is a very busy slide, but it actually shows all these theories and hypotheses that we will be discussing in a while. They work through any one of the mechanisms mentioned in this slide. So there can be peripheral injury or disease of the trigeminal neuralgia, or there can be failure of central inhibitory mechanisms, or there can be dysfunction of multiple modulatory mechanisms in trigeminal neuralgia. So in the slide I have mentioned in the boxes as P and C. So P and C basically stands for mechanisms that result in peripheral and central sensitization respectively. So there can be peripheral injury to the nerve, and whenever it is so, it results in focal demyelination. That means that there is demyelination only at a particular site, or it is affected at the affected site of injury at a particular site, which can result in hyperexcitability of nerve fibers, and that can make sensory fibers hyperexcitable, and it can also result in generation of action potentials at relatively short intervals, or it can increase the frequency of discharge of action potentials, which can in turn result in generation of electromagnetic field in the fiber, and which in turn can induce depolarization of the adjacent or the neighboring fibers that are there, which is nothing but which can result in cross excitation, and this can cause allodynia and hyperalgesia or trigeminal neuralgia kind of pain. Then there can be buildup of neuropeptides at the injury site, which may be related to development of ectopic neural activity and development and modulation of neuropathic pain. Then there are central causes like reduced basal ganglia, mu opioid receptor, altered gray matter in sensory and motor cortex has also been implicated. Then cytokines like tumor necrosis factor alpha and interleukins like interleukin 1 beta and interleukin 6 have been implicated both in central and peripheral sensitization. Then trigeminal nerve, it lies very close to superior cerebellar artery, anterior and posterior inferior cerebellar arteries, and superior petrosal vein, including the several tributaries. So there is it has been postulated that these arteries can cause pressure on trigeminal nerve and result in pain. So there is a brain sagging theory that has been proposed by Janetta, which proposes that whenever there is sagging of brain, it can put pressure on the trigeminal nerve. But if this theory was to be believed, trigeminal neuralgia should occur bilaterally. However, only about 5% of the cases or less than 5% of the cases of trigeminal neuralgia are bilateral, which makes the theory not so reliable. Then there is Dandy's theory of arterial nerve compression, which postulates increased vessel tortuosity with age, which can result in pressure on the nerve, and it can also result in pain. Then there are inflammatory processes which can lead to pro-inflammatory cytokines, growth factors, hydrolytic enzymes and nitric oxide, with consequent decrease in nociceptor activation threshold. So whenever there is decrease in the nociceptor or pain activation threshold, it's obvious that it increases the frequency of the discharge of the action potential, and therefore it increases the nerve fiber excitability and results in frequent bouts of pain due to that. Then there is another central mechanism in which there is kinase phosphorylation regulated by extracellular signal ERK, which seems to be involved in central sensitization. Also, there is a recent study which has shown that astrocytes are involved in NMDA glutamate receptor changes, which is also important for central sensitization. Then there are studies in childhood and familial clustering which suggest that certain genetic alterations like gain of function mutations of voltage gated sodium channels take place. So basically it's a type of mutation in which altered gene product possesses a new molecular function or a new pattern of gene expression, and this theory, it holds good as sodium channel blockers are the most effective drugs that are used for the management of pain in trigeminal neuralgia. So in the resting state, the nerve cells on the outside are positively charged and inside are negatively charged. So action potentials happen when the neuron, they open the protein channels in its membrane, and these channels allow sodium ions to flow from outside to inside of the nerve, and this changes the inside of the nerve now from negative to positive, and this results in the firing of the action potential. So this activity is basically exacerbated in trigeminal neuralgia when this gain of function mutation occurs in the voltage gated sodium channel. Then there is another central mechanism which is increased activity of spinal tract nucleus of trigeminal, thalamus, primary and secondary somatosensory cortex, among other central areas, which is also implicated. Then there can be increased sodium channel density, there can be decreased potassium channel expression and increased expression of voltage gated calcium channels, which can lead to subsequent depolarization of membrane with consequent calcium inflow and action potential generation, which can result in repetitive discharge through several mechanisms as stated here. So coming to the vascular theory, so vascular theory basically it works on the neurovascular contact. Whenever there is any kind of neurovascular contact, it can result in compression, and which can in turn lead to focal demyelination, and which can result in trigeminal neuralgia kind of pain. So basically there can be persistent primitive trigeminal arteries, aneurysm or abnormal vessels, tumors, chronic meningeal inflammation or any kind of lesions near the trigeminal nerve, sharper trigeminal pontine angles, smaller CPA cisterns or short cisternal trigeminal neuronal systems. So all that can result in arterial compression, or there can be just venous conflict. So there are a lot of arteries and petrosal vein which is close to the trigeminal nerve, as we discussed in the last slide. So there can be either arterial compression or there can be venous compression, or there can be compression due to both. And due to the vascular contact at the root entry zone, there can be either displacement or grooving of the nerves can occur, or in very severe cases there can be severe root indentation that can occur, or distortion can occur in the proximal root. So if it is very mild, there can be just displacement, and if it's very severe, there can be root indentation that can occur. So whenever there's root indentation or distortion in proximal root, there are more chances of the occurrence of trigeminal neuralgia. So whenever there's displacement, there can be damage and injury, localized damage which is specifically related to the vascular contact, where the nerve touches the vessel. Only in that area there is localized injury. Then there is loss of myelin, and then there is hyperexcitability of the demyelinated nerve fibers, ectopic impulse discharge, or there can be spontaneous and triggered after discharge. There can be cross excitation between sensory channels, that if there is in one injured nerve fiber, the adjacent nerve fiber can also start discharging or start producing signals. So there can be differentiation, there can be impaired segmental inhibition, and it can result in also emphatic transmission. Then there is another thing, there is these A beta fibers which carry the touch sensation. They lie very closely or in close proximity with A delta and C fibers which carry pain sensation. So what happens whenever there is this epiphactic crosstalk and wherever there is cross excitation, that is there can be simultaneous activation of both A beta and A delta and C fibers due to this epiphactic crosstalk. So this explains that trigger zones that occur. So whenever we are touching some area, touch sensation is there, so the A beta fibers actually have to discharge during that time. We should feel only the sensation of touch. But since the touch sensation, since these A beta fibers lie very close to A delta and C fibers, they also start discharging, and we can simultaneously see pain in those area, and that explains the trigger zones that are present. Then another thing is that there is one term known as transition zone and route entry zone. So basically they are used synonymously in lot of publications, but it's actually the transition zone which is an anatomic area which is more vulnerable than the route entry zone, which is in where exactly the transition of peripheral Schwann cell myelination occurs to central myelination, that is transition zone. But whereas the route entry zone, it is used to define the portion of this transition zone. It also includes the central myelin root portion, and it also includes the adjacent brain stem surface. So the two terms should not therefore be used interchangeably. Then coming to bioresonance theory. So in bioresonance theory, it states that the vibration frequency of the trigeminal nerve which is there, it becomes close to the surrounding structures frequency becomes close to the frequency of the trigeminal nerve, and when there is bioresonance of this trigeminal nerve occurs due to that, and then this can result into the damage of trigeminal nerve fibers, which can lead to abnormal transmission of the impulse, and which can in turn lead to facial pain. Then there is ignition hypothesis by Dever et al. So in this, there can be specific abnormalities of trigeminal efferent neurons in the trigeminal root or ganglion, and this can cause injury, and it can injure the sensory neurons, which can render axons and exotomized somatic excitable, and it can also result in central hypersensitization, and this can lead to as a result of these, there can be increase after discharge activity, abnormal electrical behavior, and there can be focus of hyperactivity which can be seen in the retrogastrian root, which can further result in non-nociceptive signal being perceived as pain paroxysms. Then there is allergic hypothesis, in which there is indirect evidence for allergy. So factors like cold, whenever there is tonsillitis, rhinitis, maxillary sinusitis. So all these chronic inflammation can result in, they can trigger the local immune response, and which can in turn lead to the release of, there is increased level of serum levels of histamine. There is amount of IgE secretion increases, and it starts producing histamine, serotonin, and all these things into intercellular space, and this histamine starts collecting. There can be local allergic reaction which can occur, which can irritate the trigemin and result in pathogenesis of trigeminal neuralgia. Then there is short connection theory proposed by Dot in 1951, which is nothing but the demyelinated axons, interconnections, spontaneous activity, and ectopic impulses generation can result in trigeminal neuralgia kind of pain. Then there is hypothesis by Sicard, which proposes that there can be narrowing of the osseous canals, which transmit the nerve branches, which can result in compression of these nerve branches, which can in turn lead to trigeminal neuralgia. So coming to the central pathogenesis theory by Karloff. So basically in this, whenever there is dystrophy of peripheral branches due to compression or any kind of allergic inflammation, it starts sending out signals to the central nervous system and starts producing functional disturbances and start producing a focus in the central nervous system, which is independent of any kind of efferent impulsation, that is, which is independent of peripheral discharges. Like peripherally, if I am activating only, then the central nervous system is going to act. It's not like that. Although these peripheral signals are actually activating the central nervous system, but slowly it starts producing a focus in the brain which is independent of these peripheral signals, and this generator or central nervous system focus basically then starts activating the reticulate or mesencephalon structures, limbonuclei, limbic system, and brain cortex, and this basically results in pathologic algogenic system of pain, and this results in pain through all the central mechanisms that we have discussed in the very first slide. It starts developing pain through all those mechanisms. So that brings us to the end of the video. So if you have any doubts or queries, you can leave a message in the comment section below. And if you have liked the video, do hit the like button and don't forget to share and subscribe. And thank you so much for watching. Thank you.